Senior Bowl is over. NFL Combine's at the end of February, and in between, going to be talking a lot about the Saints draft. But I think the focus right now, or at least mine, is on what's going on in day three. We all know about the three picks in the first three rounds. Should land us a top 100 prospect at all three spots. However, the majority of our draft is going to be dealing with prospects at 150 or below. And if the Saints want to have a second successful draft like they did in 2025, there needs to be some particular focus on day three. Today's Saints Film Room, we'll talk about some comments running backs coach Joel Thomas made as head coach of the American team in the Senior Bowl. We're going to look at two of those day three prospects that helped themselves a lot in the Senior Bowl and may not be day three prospects anymore. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints.
This is the sheer time that we can get with these players and really find out who loves football. Yeah, like we need guys that love football. They're dying to be elite football players, professional football players, and we're on the front line right now this week here in Mobile.
Now, that was Saints associate head coach, running back coach Joel Thomas, who was the head coach of the American team at the Senior Bowl. In that interview, and that was after the day one practice, I believe, he was asked various questions, but one of the things at the very end, and that's where that response was coming from, was the Saints, as usual, had a significant presence at the Senior Bowl, and this is more their typical presence. Last year wasn't as much because we were trying to figure out the whole head coaching thing. But now our presence was back to normal. And Thomas and other Saints staff members were coaches on the team, or for the American team, excuse me. He was specifically talking about, hey, as an organization, we're looking for guys who love to play football. Now, this ties into something that since Kellen Moore and his staff showed up in New Orleans, and at every opportunity when stuff like this comes up, they make, and I'm going to paraphrase it because they say it in different ways, but it all basically comes down to the same thing. Not only finding the best players, but finding the right players. And everything they've done so far leads me to believe that that's their mantra. Don't get it wrong. They're not looking for a bunch of Rudy Rudigers. And if you know that reference. But what they're looking for is we need talented players. Absolutely no doubt. You can't win without them. But they have to be the right talented players. They never really define what that is. And I don't think they're going to. But in interviews like this, you will catch blips of it. Guys who love to play the game of football. Mobile had a bunch of them. There were stories. Black, the running back from Indiana, who played in the East-West Shrine game on Tuesday, hopped on a plane, flew into Mobile, started practicing, and played again in the Senior Bowl on Saturday. Montgomery, who with Louisiana ties was a walk-on LSU basketball player, had to leave school, found himself in a roundabout way at Nichols University for 2 years as a wide receiver, then at John Carroll for 2 years as a wide receiver, shows up in Mobile and is just spinning heads about what he's doing out on the field. A couple of examples, but to the point of this conversation and why I'm talking about it, as soon as I finished my last recent video on the way too early mock draft, I started looking at the prospects. And like I said in the intro, you got three picks in the top 100, 8, 42, and 73. And what's basically going to happen is 8 is, hey, we're getting one of 8 players that we really like for whatever reason. As you move down the draft, 42, you figure we're getting one guy in the top 50. The math works out that way automatically. 73, we still have shot at guys in the top 100. We're going to sit for almost 60 picks till the fourth round, getting in at 132 right now. 150 is going to be in the fifth round somewhere, depending on once they start in early March, actually finalize the compensatory picks starting at the end of the fourth round. So then it starts getting muddled. Because what we all know, but I'm going to state it obviously anyway, because I think it's worth remembering and to keep it in mind at all times when you're talking about this, inevitably, every position has gaps. There's going to be a group of guys that are at the top, then the next level, then the next level. Not only in a position, but then when you start looking across positions, trying to fill out your draft board, what do we need? What do we want? what's available especially as the course of the draft happens. That gap, the names up top are smaller. Get into those gaps, the names get bigger. And as you go down, the gaps get bigger and the names get bigger. And then you're sitting in a sea of players who, by nature of the fact they played major college football, and in some cases, some of these guys we were talking about that didn't, but still played at such a high level, people are recognizing it. Now, in a bigger and bigger pool, how do you separate yourself? And if you're the team, what are the factors you're looking for to separate? So as I was trying to look through some day three guys and trying to find, hey, these are some needs we may need still on day three to add, especially if we weren't able to address them earlier. As I'm going through the list, I, tight end, and if we don't get a top edge player in those first three picks, were two of the positions I was looking at. And as I'm following the Senior Bowl, once I finished the previous video and catching up on everything, more times than just that one, the Joel Thomas reference, we're looking for players who love to play football. So, two names that were outside of the top 150. Now, the Damon Tucker, the Nadame Tucker, excuse me, from Western Michigan, was right on the edge, and he's probably in the top 50 after Saturday. Nate, and yes, this one's a tough one. Boerkircher, and we'll refer to him as Nate as the rest of the video, also was a guy that, hey, in the 180s at top draft prospects, but after Senior Bowl week, he's probably moving up. Some things I like about him, but once I started getting into their backstories, going, I think both of these young men are showed in their history to get to the point where they're at now. They love to play football, try to put it all together. And I think these are some guys that we need to keep our eyes on because I think they're going to check a lot of the boxes the Saints are looking for. Nadame Tucker. Interesting week for him, definitely. Going into the Senior Bowl, you probably saw his name floating somewhere around 150 draft prospects. Like I said, that's going to put you day three territory if everything goes according to Hoyle. Earlier, I mentioned he could be in the top 50. Basing that on some of the draft guys covering the Senior Bowl was starting to make that comment during practice week before he even played the game. Which, oh, by the way, let's go look at those stats from Saturday. He had 5 tackles, 4 for solos, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble. Just kind of fills out what he did his senior year, or completes, I should say, what he did his senior year during the course of the season. So 2025 at Western Michigan, 14 and a half sacks. Tied him for first in FBS. With Bailey, who's a top 10 prospect overall from Texas Tech. 41 hurries, 316 snaps. That's pass rush. 93.3 PFF pass rush grade for 2025. That's the second highest total in the whole entire draft class. Also looking at some of his PFF numbers, true set pass rush grade 93.9, actually higher than his pass rush grade. Refresher, true set is just your pass rush snaps against an offense who's in pass pro. They're basically down in distance. Whatever's going on dictates there's no threat of a run. There's no trickeration, none of that. They're dropping back. They're throwing the ball downfield. Pass rush win rate. This one blows my mind. 28.4%. That's some high win rates when you're beating up on some offensive lineman who's trying to block you. Both of those, the true set pass rush grade and the pass rush win rate, top 10 percentile for PFF in 2025 for pass rushers. And when you look at his run grade, falls down still above average, but it's in the average percentile at 72.6, which is not bad. That was out of 250 snaps. Now, if you look at his film, he shows an ability. He can set the edge. He can be disruptive at the mesh point in zone runs. He shows being able on read options and RPO type plays to be able to get in the backfield quick and be disruptive on it. Now, one thing he graded out insanely high for in PFF is their run stop rate, 9.3%, which is also top 10 percentile PFF in 2025. Remaining 13 snaps he had was in pass defense, which not enough snaps to grade, but it should be noted that on two of those, he did end up with passes defended. So, all in all, very versatile football player. You got to kind of ask yourself, what's his backstory? What's his history, right? Because that's an insane, even Western Michigan, which is FBS, but maybe not necessarily the highest level of football. That's some insane numbers. What else is going on with this guy? Well, here's where it kind of gets, interestingly enough, into guys who love to play football territory. He didn't start playing football till his senior year in high school, which meant not exactly a highly touted prospect for college. It's his first 2 years in 2020 and 2021 community colleges, Independence Community College, then Hutchinson Community College. Gets his FBS shot at the University of Houston in 2022, stayed there 3 seasons, 22, 23, and 24, played in a total of 13 games. Not a lot of FBS experience. And this is some of the stuff that's being, I don't want to say held against him, but being factored into why a guy with these numbers in 2025 is way down the draft board. They look at, and I say they, a lot of people putting these boards together and these prospect lists together, saying, well, look, played 6 seasons of college football, 2 of them at community college, 4 of them in the FBS, didn't do much for the first 3 of them. Had a breakout year in 2025, but that's 1 out of the 6 years he's been in school, which since he's been in college 6 years, older player, he will be turning 26 in June, 2 months after the draft. So this is kind of the stuff that I think holds him back as far as why people are questioning what's going on. But I'm looking at it going, look, had an insane year at Western Michigan, threw out some insane tape in that year. I don't know why there was no opportunities at the University of Houston. Really wasn't able to find that out. But overall, I think you've got the makings of a good football player here. Somebody that should be on the Saints' radar, even if he doesn't manage to hold, the top 50 or top 100, some of the projections that are coming out now, since he topped off a great last season with a great week in the Senior Bowl at Mobile. But I can tell you this, guy that started playing football his senior year in high school was willing to go through 2 community colleges, basically ride the pine for 3 years at Houston, gets himself into Western Michigan and does what he does. I feel pretty confident to say that as far as one of the boxes we were talking about checking for the Saints, guy loves to play football. I'm pretty sure Nadame Tucker loves to play football. Another spot I was looking at in day 3 was tight end, specifically run blocking tight end. About a year ago, after Mobile, talked about they had a very strong tight end presence there. One of the guys that showed up was Jackson Hawes, who universally everybody went, man, he was one of the best blocking out of Georgia Tech, one of the best blocking tight ends. But when he gets to Mobile, starts flipping some heads with his pass catching ability, red zone work, especially. Going after watching that, going, man, that's somebody the Saints ought to seriously consider looking at on day 3. Didn't come out to fruition for the Saints, but it certainly did for Buffalo, where Hawes joined a really good tight end room that was already there, but brought his game. They wanted to go 12, 13, even 14 personnel, which they did a little bit. It's a blocking tight end out there, but what you had is a blocking tight end that sometimes scheme-wise, they could bust him wide open to throw him easy passes. Sometimes he was the guy that the defense just didn't cover, kind of forgot about because of the other issues, ends up catching some balls. Had a pretty decent year as a pass catcher, phenomenal year as a run blocker for the Bills, and not a huge part of their success, but certainly a key component of it. Kind of looking at tight end Nate, Boerkircher, tight end Nate, let's call him the rest, for Texas A&M, because he's definitely one of the best pass blockers in college football in 2020. Excuse me, blocking tight ends in college football in 2025. So in the run blocking grade, 72.2, with looking at the minimum snap count for PFF, that puts him in the top 10 percentile. Actually puts him in about the top 7%, because when you look at just the guys that had the qualifying number of snaps in the running game at tight end in 2025, he finished 21st overall out of 315 names, somewhere around there. That's where he made his name. But you can go look at his film, and we'll show some of that at the end of this, that in the passing game at A&M, they trusted him to catch the ball too. Not only did they trust him, they schemed stuff up for him or found situations where he wasn't a primary concern in coverage for the defense, and A&M made him pay. So the thing is, he was a transfer to A&M in 2025, actually a graduate transfer. Originally from the state of Nebraska, coming out of high school, only had one offer to play college football. Said, I'm going to go walk on at Nebraska. Gets to Nebraska, walks on at Nebraska. Played 4 years there. And the thing about it is, as you can imagine, as a walk on, didn't play much early, but in those 4 years started working up to more and more snaps. Did it mostly through run blocking ability as a tight end. But even his final year in Nebraska, started earning some snaps in the passing game, caught some balls. In fact, if you add up his every receiving stat he had prior to that, doesn't add up to what he was able to get that last year in Nebraska. When he transfers, he goes into a very good tight end room at Texas A&M on a very good offense, on a very good football team, seamlessly meshes in there. So again, he wasn't a primary guy. He wasn't the focal point, but he did some very good stuff in that passing game. He definitely did some great stuff in the running game where he showed he could block in zone, block in gap. He could pull like he was a guard when they needed him to. He could kick out on the backside so a running back could take a cutback lane and pick up yardage that way if necessary. Even in pass blocking, did a pretty good job. And some of the video shows where he was able to do as an inline tight end. Let me go ahead, chip that edge rusher, make sure I push him towards the tackle, and then get out for available for the check down. All stuff, good stuff that as an experienced football player you want to see from a guy like that. He is also in the category of played a lot of years in college. He is going to be turning 25 in September, so he's got a bit of age on him, and it slowly progressed for him to get to the point where he walked on in Nebraska to being, again, not the focal point of A&M's offense, but a key component to their success. There's absolutely no doubt about it. What makes it even tougher for him in this category is he is not considered an elite pass catching tight end by any stretch of the imagination. He's a good one. But when you look at the overall tight end prospect list, near the top, you've got Sadiq for Oregon, Claire for Ohio State, and probably Jake Andrews for Texas as guys that, let's say, all around tight ends, where they're being viewed at, hey, they can catch the ball, they're athletic, they can block, they can do a lot of different things we want them to do. They're all in the basically in the top 70, expected to be earlier picks. A few of the pure move pass catching monster tight ends are up there with them. But after that, the majority of the tight ends through this class are components of pass catchers. Very few get into the run blocking aspect of it. And in the case of tight end Nate here, I think that how the NFL views his blocking ability as a tight end, with it looks like some ability to be part of the passing game. How do they view him if he's this year as a comp? Jackson Hawes, that ended up in Buffalo. I think that determines his draft status. But for the Saints, again, guys who love to play football. I'm talking about he had one scholarship offer and said, no, no, I'm going to my home school. I'm going to walk on and I'm going to earn the right to play, which he basically did throughout his time in Nebraska, and to the point that when he decided, I want one more year of football and transfers into A&M and does what he does there. I think this is, again, one of those things, depending on how it shakes out for in day 3 for the Saints. I think he checks the I love to play football box, and I think he's pretty good at what he does. And I think what he does is something that the Saints really need to add in to this team, that blocking component, but can be a threat in the passing game. The importance of day 3 for the Saints. You got to have a great day 3 to have a great draft. You got to have a good day 3 to have a good draft, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We had a very solid to good draft, it seems, in 2025, but we need to keep following that up. For too long, the Saints neglected in the pursuit of doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on trying to win the division and make the playoffs with a roster that was far from able to do it. Finally looking at it and going, we've got to retool this thing 1 through 53 plus the practice squad, be able to overcome some of the issues that pop up during the course of a season. I think last year we did a much better job of that than we had in any of the previous seasons. Day 3 is going to be very important to keep restocking that, and probably in areas where they may not be able to use the higher picks to get the guys that would be perfect. The case of day 3, there's an expression that I like, which is sometimes perfect is the enemy of good. Meaning, if we're trying to be perfect down here, we may just not be able to make ourselves good. And I think that was some of the things that were going on in day 3's previous Saints drafts, which were not good. We may have gotten 1 or 2 players up top that are still on the roster and are good players. But by and large, they're not on our roster anymore, and some of them aren't even in the NFL anymore. We've got to get away, and I think we're starting the process of doing that, back to what we used to do, going, look, he may not ever be an NFL starter, but for right now, he's perfect for what we need. So he can come in, he can do a job, he can fill a role. Push comes to shove, and the injury bug hits us, and this is how good teams survive it. They can get us through a pinch until we can fix it, figure it out, or we get our starter back. When you're looking at these 2 guys, I think they definitely check that box. Beyond that, and we've talked about earlier, the talent, yes, has to be there, and I think they both have it. It may be specialized, it may not be, but I think there's some useful tools to work with there. They definitely can come in and fill some roles, and makes them possible to probable day 3 is the fact that a lot of the NFL is still scared to death of older players who spent, especially since we're still dealing with players who are able to have 5 and 6 years, and it may even be more of that college eligibility that they used before entering the NFL. These older players, it took too long for them to break out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the Saints showed in last year's draft, if you think about who we took, relied on, became a starter, and we are going, man, we're going to rely on this guy for a while. They're not necessarily scared of that. They're not looking for perfection. What they're looking for are good football players, talented football players that are the right football players. So I think, if not these 2, I think they're at least good examples of what the Saints need to keep digging in and on day 3 and finding, getting on the roster. They may not ever see a second contract with the Saints, but I think the focus right now while we're rebuilding in day 3 is, what can they do this go around on their current contract as a rookie to help us? Then we'll see what happens after that. They'll either come back, or we'll find the next group of guys that are going to replace them, that are going to do the same thing, and look to see what we can develop and turn them into. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And if not specifically these 2, and like I said, they're more examples, but I think they're realistic examples of what can help the Saints. Tell me who else. First time here, like what you saw, hey, like, share, subscribe. Go ahead, leave that comment and let me know down there what you think about this. Or like I said, bring up some names that I can go look at and possibly draw some film and keep this film room series while we're waiting for the combine to really kick things off. Keep it going and see where we're at and see what some of those young men down there can do and if they can help the Saints win. So be a kind of not regular schedule while I do these because sometimes, like in the case of tight end Nate, it was a real struggle to find enough film to do a film room on. Some of them are easier, so that kind of plays into it. It'll be semi regular, but just make sure you keep an eye out on your notifications, and you'll see them pop up. And until I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.